This is Chris Lee of Southeastern 14, presented by the Bearded Iris Brewing Company, here to tell you some things in the aftermath of South Carolina's 9-0 win over Georgia in the SEC tournament on Tuesday morning. The Gamecocks will now face LSU at 9:30 Central Wednesday morning in Hoover. Weather permitting, that's always a mystery in Hoover, but let's talk about the one that was just played, and then I wanted to get into some ramifications for each team. For Carolina, anytime you can go and win your opener on two pitchers and get a shutout, you feel terrific exiting the game. Not only for your future in the tournament, but also just the state of your pitching staff. And South Carolina has had some pitching troubles at times, but James Hicks gets a start. He throws a career-high 90 pitches, goes 6 2/3 scoreless with 6 strikeouts. Kate Austin goes 2 1/3 for the save. Second baseman Will Tippett had 3 hits. That included a triple and 3 RBIs. The Gamecocks did not hit a home run, which they did a lot of this year, but they reached base 18 times, and that's a good recipe for winning in Hoover, is getting a ton of base runners. Now, for Georgia, nothing went well, starting with Jaden Woods being chased early after an inning and 2/3. Nobody really pitched too well after him, and that's why Georgia's season is over. The question now for Georgia, and I want to address this before you get into Carolina's postseason resume, is will Georgia make a coaching change? Scott Stricklin has been there 10 years. He has never made a College World Series at Georgia. Ironically, he made one at Kent State, I think 2 seasons before he took the Georgia job. Anyway, I think we'll wait and see now. Georgia's season is over. The question coming out of this one is South Carolina an NCAA tournament host? And when D1 Baseball did its bracket, or really its regional projections on Monday, and by the way, I have a lot of respect for those guys. Several of them are friends of mine. I know how hard they work. They're the best in the business. They didn't have South Carolina in the field of, well, they had them in the field of 64. They just didn't have them hosting. And I think that deserves a little bit of unpacking, especially in light of the win over Georgia. Okay, let's start with the bad with South Carolina. The committee considers the last 15 games, and Carolina, even after beating Georgia, is 5-10. That's bad. Carolina lost a home series with Tennessee this last weekend. I think if Carolina had won 2 of 3 instead of 1-3, or excuse me, 1-2 in that, I think this probably would be settled and Carolina would be hosting, but that's not the way it went down. But let's reset it after today, okay? Carolina moved up to 5 in the RPI after beating Georgia, according to Warren Nolan. Number 5 strength of schedule overall. 20 wins against the top 50 RPI. Now, I think I'm right about this. I did a quick look. I think that ties South Carolina with the national high. I don't think anybody's won more than 20 games against the RPI top 50. If you want to pick nits, Carolina is 10-13 against the top 25. Not great, but my goodness, 23 games against RPI top 25 teams. Are you kidding me? 10-1 against 26 to 50. That adds up to 20-14 against the RPI top 50. Tell me how that's not a tournament team. Plus, if you're looking for downsides, Carolina had one loss outside the RPI top 100. That's terrific. You'll see teams that are ahead of South Carolina that had more losses than that. Some other things to consider. South Carolina's non-conference strength of schedule, I think, was 56. When you're looking for things that the committee can hold against you, that's not really one of them. Carolina's non-conference RPI, number 8. So Carolina took business outside of the league. Carolina went 16-13 in the league. No, it's not 17 or 18 wins, but 16-13 a lot of years gets you a host. Combine that with the 5 RPI, all those things. And let's consider this too. And I'm not trying to pander to Carolina fans here. This is just the truth. I thought Carolina was a better team in that LSU series. And if that game doesn't get rained out, I think Carolina wins that series. If it does, it's 17-13. And again, I think this discussion is not one we're having. I think Carolina at that point would be hosting. That's not the way it went down. And I get that you can't give Carolina credit for something it didn't do. But, oh, by the way, Carolina gets a chance to see what might have been, maybe, I guess is a good way to put it, when it faces LSU on Wednesday. Now, I don't know what LSU will do in terms of a pitching plan. I would presume it's not Paul Skeens, because I don't think you want to throw him on a Wednesday after throwing him on a Thursday. That's up to the coaching staff. We'll see where that goes. And LSU will be a little bit more rested, but Carolina beats LSU. I don't know how you keep this team out of the tournament, and that's just with that alone. Let's talk about the injuries. My goodness, this team had injuries. Hall, Sanders, Jerzenbeck, McGillis, Veach, LaCroix, Wimmerna. Some of those guys are back. Some of those guys won't be back. Jerzenbeck's done, and I think Noah Hall might be too. South Carolina fans can correct me there, but man, I just look at this across the board. The 5-10 in the last 15 is really the only red flag that you can put on Carolina's resume. Would you have liked the record in the league to be better than 16-13? Yes, you would. But teams have gotten hosting spots with that before. And let's be honest about this. If the SEC didn't have 9 teams in the hosting discussion, would this even be a discussion? I don't think so. I think what this is going to come down to is you got 9 teams with legit hosting resumes. Carolina's one of them. Is the committee going to want to put 9 teams hosting from the SEC? My guess is probably not, even if that's unfair to the league, and I think it might be, because you don't want half of your hosts or more being teams from the same conference. That might make things a little, I don't know if it makes them harder with regional pairings and stuff like that too, or super regional pairings or whatever. I don't think it probably has much effect there. I'm just trying to think of all the possibilities. But look, I don't know how you can keep South Carolina out of hosting with the straight face, unless you just want to say there can't be that many SEC teams hosting and somebody's got to go, and they finished poorly. Other than that, everything else works in Carolina's favor, in my opinion. I don't know if a team that's ever been in the top 5 of the RPI hasn't hosted. Mark Etheridge would probably have the answer to that, but my goodness, if you're top 5 in the RPI and you don't host with a conference record that's 3 games above 500 in the regular season and now 4 games above 500 if you consider all games, that to me does not seem like justice. All right, quick word from our sponsor, the Bearded Iris Brewing Company in West Nashville. It's Nashville's home for a beer that is unapologetically itself, memorably composed, fun to drink. They offer a wide variety of hop-focused offerings like IPAs and DIPAs, as well as selected fruit sour stouts and a new hard seltzer. Again, check them out in West Nashville. Let them know you heard about it on our channel. We will be recapping more of these games, I think, as things happen of significance. Tennessee and Texas A&M is one I'm watching because the Vols have an interesting hosting case. And you got to compare and contrast those to Auburn, South Carolina, Alabama, and some other bubble teams, which is really, it's really interesting for the Vols. I think I'll try to talk about that after that game is played, especially if Tennessee wins, because I think the case becomes more interesting in that instance. If Tennessee loses, I have a hard time finding a path for the Vols to host, but I don't think it's also impossible either. All right, I'm Chris Lee for Southeastern 14 presented by Bearded Iris. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again We'll see you again soon with more SEC baseball content. Best way to get it, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Those things both help us out and they cost you nothing. Again, thank you for watching. We'll see you again soon.